Hey, is anyone else here old enough to actually remember the Sega Megadrive / Genesis game Toejam and Earl back from 1991? No? Really? Well, I guess that makes me feel pretty old. I played it at a mate's house. Yes, I know, that is how we played co-op games back in the day. We used to have to go around to a friend's house and play together, split screen on a console. And you know what? I have fond memories of playing this game. So when I discovered that they made a modern day reboot of it, I thought, yeah, let's check that out. Let's see if it's as good as I remember. And is it just as I remember? Well, yes it is. But the trouble is, what passed for a good game in 1991 kind of feels really dated in 2019. According to the spiel, this is a mashup of the best bits with new improvements, but from what I can see, it plays exactly the same as I remember from 20 odd years ago. And despite my often fondness for games that I enjoyed during my childhood, I got bored of this within an hour and a half. So, let me surmise the plot for you as far as it goes. Toejam and Earl are a couple of funk-loving, space-trekking aliens who decide to nick their mate's spaceship and take it for a joyride in the hope of impressing a couple of chicks they picked up enough to cop a blowjob off them. Alas, however, being morons, the only sucking action that goes on is when they accidentally suck Earth, themselves, and the spaceship into a black hole instead. And now, cast adrift, your job is to traverse the 25 broken levels of Earth, picking up the 10 missing pieces of the spaceship to put it back together and travel back off into the cosmos. Yeah, it's probably not a particularly deep plot as plots go, but there you have it. Anyway, gameplay-wise, you pick yourself a starting character. They all have slightly different stats to begin with. Then you go plodding around these islands looking to pick up a bit of cash, a few presents, shake a lot of trees, shake a lot of bushes, avoid the angry inhabitants of Earth that are left. Well, they're not all angry, there's some friendly characters there that'll help you out too. Basically looking for the one part of this spaceship that you might find on the level. Now, there's 10 parts, there's 25 levels. It just means that you do an awful lot of plodding around to fully explore a level in the hope that you might find something, and you take the elevator to the next level up, and repeat. Now, the main theme of the game is that you'll pick up presents as you are running around the place, and you won't know what they are until you either get them identified or you unwrap them, and it usually will be some sort of item to have a bit of fun with, to use. For example, the spring boots, which can make you jump around, or there's, a water ring or whatever that you can jump in and float across ponds and stuff like that. Some of the presents aren't all that good. You don't know what they are half the time until you get them opened, and then you have to use them, and then it's too late to save them. It's just a bit of a shitty, sucky system. It worked pretty much the same back in 1991, as I recall, so things haven't moved on an awful lot. You'll also pick up cash, which can be very useful. You can pay some of the NPCs that you meet, some of the characters, the friendly ones anyway, to identify your presents or to do other things for you, or to, I don't know, you do stuff. You can also put it in parking meters, which will open up a little chain of events, which you might find some bonus at the end of it. And the trouble is, all these things, you don't know if it's going to be good or bad until you go and do it. You open a present, it might be something shit, it might be something useful. You go and do the little parking meter thing, the trail of events that leads up to, and you might get something nice, or it might spawn an enemy which will then come and prod you up the arse like this little devil thing does. I've got to say, it's not exactly thrilling gameplay. There's no hard mind-bending puzzles, there's no platform element to this. It's just plod around and pick stuff up. And you have to shake the trees and bushes to see what's in them. You have to try and hope to get something good out of them, some hidden cash, or a present, or whatever else, some food to get some of your life back. And so you just plod around the map, the entire map, shaking every damn tree and bush you come to. And you do it repeatedly, hoping to get enough stuff to, I don't know, spend some cash on something. And there's all these unhappy earthlings running around you. I've got to say, actually, some of the bad guys are quite amusing in this. There's a little devil chases you around with a fork. There's a bogeyman that's invisible and jumps out on you and scares you. There's a mad dentist with a drill. There's some idiot on a mobile phone texting, not watching where he's going. There's a man in black who will zap you. You're an alien. You deserve to be zapped. And who else is there? There's a few others. They're actually pretty good, I suppose, quite amusing little characters, but they're an utter pain in the ass, especially the one that puts you to sleep and robs you of all your money. So anyway, yeah, you plod slowly up and down these maps until you've found everything you think you want to find off a level, and you take the elevator up to the next level, which involves quite a long loading screen, considering that there is absolutely shit all for it to load in. I don't understand why there's such a long pause between levels. And it's not like, once you're up a level, that's it. Because if one of these little bastards chasing you around with a fork, or the bogeyman or anything else, manages to hit you, right when you're on the edge of one of these cliffs, one of these floating space islands, you'll fall off the edge. You'll be chucked off, and you'll fall all the way back down to the level below, at which point it loads straight back in. Down on that level below, you plod around back to the elevator to come back up. It can be really frustrating because it is so slow to get around, or at least it was with this character to start with. But being chucked off the edge and having to go back down, it adds absolutely nothing to the game. And that's pretty much the game, to be honest. You just repeat that for 25 levels, because the last part I think is always on the 25th level, as I understand, and there you have it. Now, this is one of the game modes. There are other game modes, and I believe that it is randomized when you start a new game, so the levels will be different whenever you play. You can also play in co-op mode with another player, emulating the first game, split screen if you want, or I think you can play co-op across the internet. I didn't try that, but that's a good feature of the game, I'll give it that. But the game does fall down in so many areas. For one, the control scheme. You're pretty much forced into using a controller. It's designed to be used like that on PC, which is what I'm playing it on. It works okay like that. Because the keyboard and mouse controls are absolute bollocks. In fact, I don't know if you can even use the mouse at all. There's a mouse pointer that floats around in the menu when you load the game up to start with, but you can't select anything with it. It floats around there, but you have to use the arrow keys and I think the C key on the keyboard, or the X key, to actually select an option. And when you go and look at the key bindings in this, they're A, S, D, Z, X, C, and the arrow keys. Who the hell uses A, S, D, Z, X, and C to move around on a keyboard? And as far as I can tell, you can't customize those, which is just stupid. So, yeah, the control layout is absolute rubbish. But my main issue with the game is that it's just so damn dull. This sort of simple gameplay, when you add in a few comedy elements and a decent soundtrack, this sort of stuff passed for an okay game back in 1991. We didn't expect a lot. Our machines weren't incredibly powerful. The big open world games and huge, massive story-driven games of today, or the massively fast-paced shooting, action shooter things, they just weren't possible back then. But now, things have moved on a little bit, and yes, I know this game was supposed to just be like a reboot of the original Toejam and Earl, but I mean, the gameplay is just so dull and so repetitive, and I probably say this too many times in games, but repetitive gameplay does not a good game make, especially when it's just not interesting. Walk up to the tree, shake it, see that nothing drops out, walk up to the next one and shake it, and repeat. Oh look, there's a bit of the spaceship, great, I've got that. Now let's go up to the next level, and just repeat over and over again. You can't attack the enemies. Some of the items, the presents that you get, make a few interesting things to play with and mess about with, but overall it just isn't very good, and it's just a disappointment, and it's just dull and flat and boring. And after an hour and a half, yeah, that's all I played it for, folks, full disclosure, played it for an hour and a half, and I got sent a copy of this for free. I just didn't like it and just thought, no, enough, I've had enough, and I'm done. There are a couple of mini games thrown in to try and spice this up. There's like a dance-off where it's a bit like PlayStation dance games or whatever, where you have to hit the buttons in the right order. And there's another one where you have to make up your own beat, again, hitting the buttons in whatever order you want, make your own tune. And then you have to repeat it as it's played back to you, so don't be too clever with that. But overall, they are few and far between, and there's not enough of them to really spice up the gameplay much. Now, for the sake of balance, there are some good points to the game. The fact that it's got co-op and split screen, so you can play two-player on one computer if you have the necessary controllers that you can plug in. That's a good point. Always a good being able to play any game co-op. That's always a huge high point in my opinion. The soundtrack is actually quite good if you're into funk. I'm not especially, but the soundtrack is good and well done here. And the graphics are, of course, massively updated from the 1991 version. They look really cute and nice, and I like the animations and the colours, and it's nicely drawn for what it is. But all that being said, it's a pretty dull game by today's standards. And it's also overpriced, I think. It's 15 quid in the Steam store, and I think this is more like a 5 quid game, if I'm honest. It feels at that sort of level. The only saving grace with the price is that, well, you might pick it up in a sale at some point, but also you can play with more than one player on one copy of the game, i.e. go and split screen on one computer. Toejam and Earl? Toejam and Fail, more like. Yeah, no, that was a bit crap really, wasn't it? Got any better suggestions? Leave them in the comments down below.